welcome the participating schools. That's Kwikila Secondary, the affirmative side, Diga Tasi Uda, Diga Tau, Angelina Orea, and Lydia Eves. They are the affirmative team. Please make welcome the opposing team, Port Moresby International School, Pel Luz, Amelia Mageu, Jude Camano, and Marcus Blake. As good sportsmen and women, say hello to each other and see you on the battlefield. I'd like to once again introduce our judges. And our judges, of course, Ms. Magalu, John Iko, Mark Solon, and Dr. Patricia Paraide. Thank you very much. This is going to be a very, very interesting one. The Vagrancy Act should be introduced. Many of us over the last few months have been listening to a lot of issues arising that has resulted in the debate of the topic, the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. And many of us have experienced, have read, have seen on paper, and have read on radio about the issues, social issues that are affecting us with, that is related to the topic that we will be debating today. So may I now take this opportunity to welcome the first speaker from the affirmative team, and that's from Team Kwikila Secondary. Please make welcome Tasi Uda.
Thank you, Master Ceremony, educators, the lively audience, and not forgetting Papua New Guineans watching through the media. Okay. Once again, I am the first speaker of the government. I will be speaking politically about our action plan that will be carried out by us, the government. My second speaker, Diga, will support me with his points socially. My third speaker, Lydia, will link with her points economically. And our final speaker, Angela, will end up with her summary. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two definitions about, three, not two, sorry. There are three definitions about this vagrancy. And they are, number one, the crime of living on the street and begging. Number two, a person without a settled home or a job. Number three, in legal terminology, vagrancy refers to the offense of persons without visible means of support or domicile while able to work. Okay, to my points. Every Papua New Guinean has a village. That's true. No Papua New Guineans is out of, no Papua New Guineans have no village. All Papua New Guineans have a village. Having said that, with the definitions, we, the mindful government for the day, go for a topic that this Vagrancy Act should be introduced with the following action plans to be carried out effectively so that there is control. And this action plan are, number one, encourage vagrants to return home. Force will applied under extreme circumstances. Action plan number two, ensure that companies provide shelter that is cheaper for workers. Action plan number three, settlements be inspected and vagrant be repatriated after a certain grace period. To enable this, firstly, we, the government of the day, will establish a cheap transport system. This will enable volunteers and then repatriated to return home cheaply. I repeat, we, the government of the day, will establish a cheap transport system. This will then enable volunteers and then repatriated to return home cheaply. Secondly, maintaining system should be devised to control the influx of people into the cities. I repeat, maintaining system should be devised to control the influx of people into the cities. To conclude, with all the action plans that I have stated, as the government speaker with great authority telling the opposition to look at our master plan and really understand us. Therefore, we go for a topic that the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. Thank you, and hope your ears are fine.
Thank you. The first speaker of the affirmative team from Team Kwikila Secondary, Tasi Uda. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome the first speaker from the opposition team from Port Moresby International School, Pearl Luz.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow students, adjudicators, timekeeper, chairperson, and the affirmative team. My name is Pearl Luz, representing Port Moresby International School as the first speaker. I will define and introduce the topic at hand. The second speaker, Amelia Mega, will speak on the economical aspects of the topic. Jude Kamano, the third speaker, will speak on the political and psychological aspects of the topic, and the fourth and final speaker, Marcus Blake, will re-emphasize and summarize why we, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced because it is fundamentally against human rights. Before I move on to my argument, I would firstly like to rebut on what the first speaker of the affirmative team has stated. He quoted that there is no cheaper transport system for he said that there is no cheaper transport system for millions of people, which is not true. And how can you tell if a vagrant is good or evil? Ladies and gentlemen, the Vagrancy Act is an act put in place to stop people who have no residential establishment and means of support from moving areas or places than their own. The Vagrancy Act was introduced by the Australian government by the law of England during pre-independence to keep or stop people who had no residential establishment and means of support from moving areas or places other than their own. Court ruled the law unconstitutional as it breached the freedom of people and was abolished before independence, simply because it was fundamentally wrong. To enforce the act, the government will need the police force and the judicial system. In enforcing the act, the police force is simply undermanned, in other words, not enough human resource, under-equipped, under-tasked. With corruption present in the country today, police may not or cannot be trusted. For example, if fences were put up in different suburbs in Port Moresby and they asked police to monitor people moving in and out, stopping vagrants, a policeman standing at the fence, do you think he wouldn't let his own relative pass through? I don't think so. He would. This, again, is another form of corruption, which is nepotism. Also, evidence of this, a distinguished businessman stated in an article in 2004, I quote, In the external affairs, the government decided in May to abandon plans to repatriate hundreds of border crossers from the Indonesian province of Papua. The police was suspected of allowing entry to more than 10,000 illegal migrants. Law enforcement officials will commit arbitrary and unlawful killings simply because they may not be able to differentiate between good and evil vagrants. Many of the so-called vagrants cause no trouble and commit no offense other than being without work. Hearing the cases in court may take up a lot of valuable court time. Furthermore, because their sentences are generally short, these people receive no correction, training, whilst in jail and come out no better qualified to find a job than they were before being arrested. Judicial system cannot handle this. The prison system is seriously underfunded and prison conditions in several areas continue to be poor. Here in the country today, people are crowded and will become overcrowded if the act is put in place. Sorry. With the way that the country is going, do you think the government will have enough money to enforce this act? With the poor infrastructure around the country seen today, corruption, money being misused by the government, I don't think the government will be able to enforce this law. That is why we, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced because it is fundamentally against human rights. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pel, who's the first speaker from the opposition team. Please make welcome the second speaker from the affirmative team, Diga Tau. We want to see some fire, huh? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, the educators, the floor, and not forgetting the citizens of the Papua New Guinea who are watching through the media. Okay. As I'm the second speaker of the government, before going into my points, I will make some rebuttals on what the second speaker of the opposition have stated. Okay, he has stated something that about this fundamentally, it's to do with human rights. Okay, they've said that government are imposing like a law, something like that. But we, the government of today, we are not imposing the law to stop the movement of these people, but we are monitoring the movement of the people of Papua New Guinea so that the services can be received equally by citizens of Papua New Guinea. Okay, back to my point. To come up more effective on the action plans as stated by my first speaker, we the government state these action plans because the Vagrancy Act will be introduced so that some of the social issues will be minimized in the country of Papua New Guinea. As stated by my first speaker, in the Act number 1, that the vagrants must return home. But how could we, the government, will impose that? Okay, let me give you a classical example. Okay, we can create this through creating a cheaper transport system so that these vagrants can return home with an affordable transport system provided to them. Okay, let me give you an example. A retired Moravian police officer, after retiring, he stayed at Port Moresby for 11 years because the fares of these airlines were too expensive for him to purchase a ticket to transport his family home. So once this heavy milling bay that the Wabga level government has bought he saw that opportunity because it was operating at the affordable cost. He then transport all his families and all his cargoes with an affordable rate back to his home. So we, the government, are trying to do this so that the services can be received equally by all the citizens of Papua New Guinea. Okay, as stated by my first speaker, the Act number 2 encourages companies to provide shelter. Yes, that's very true. Private entities and governments must be directed to provide accommodation for their employees. As we can see now, doctors are living in settlements, and even the public servants are also living in settlements. They are contributing to overcrowding. Okay. So there is an influx of people circulating around that place. So we, the government, came up with this action plan in Act number 2 so that there can be a reduction of influx of people in that place and to reduce the pressure on a single breadwinner. Because once there's a overpopulation or overcrowding in that particular place, I tell you, some of your parents are the only breadwinners in that house, and we are giving, and they are contributing pressure on your parents, right? Okay, to conclude, when fulfilling the action plans that we, the government, have imposed, then it will lead to chain reaction in connection to our social issues, which will reduce the crime rates, pressure on single breadwinner, overcrowding. Therefore, we, the constructive government, are arguing that Vagrancy Act should be introduced in Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
I'd like to call now the second speaker from the opposition team, from Team Port Moresby International School. Please make welcome Amelia Mageo.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, adjudicators, timekeepers, fellow debaters, and the audience. We, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced in PNG because it is against the fundamental human rights. Before I present my case, I would like to rebut the affirmative side's argument on, quote by second speaker, cheaper transport, we can find cheaper transport. But how can we impose this? What cheaper transport is there? Because there is no system of transport which is cheaper. Now to my points. It may seem like an attractive proposition, but it is definitely a massively expensive exercise to implement the Vagrancy Act. A simple concrete barricade or fence around a residential area of about 20 meters by 40 meters is roughly 20,000 kina, inclusive of all indirect costs. That is just to put up the fence. Imagine the cost of building proper, security-proof, reinforced concrete barricade fence around Port Moresby. Along with the estimated diameter of Port Moresby, it is 17 kilometers. This will definitely be a multi-million kina project. The cost to build the security-proof barricade is awfully massive. The cost of the fence alone is already a multi-million kina project. When the fence is put up, we need people to monitor the gate. There is only one gate for entrance and exit. Therefore, you need database, and for database, you can use this to identify which vagrant belongs to which place, in which you need an ID card. The collection of data to build database is the registration of every individual vagrant. And to issue the ID cards sounds very easy, but not only will it be slow, but it will also be highly expensive. But we must also consider that the up-to-date birth registry has been very, very low. So how do you expect this Vagrancy Act, which will control people's movement, to be successful? Validity of the data in some provinces makes it a lengthy process. Time means more money. The database needs quality, but it must be considered that in some areas in Papua New Guinea, some societies, people are known by two different names. For example, I am an employer, and two different individuals, one is tall, one is short. They come and give me their CVs. But the first one who comes in the morning is taller, and he uses his name, Golora Kaloro. The next one who comes in the afternoon uses that same name. So, how accurate can this data be? Therefore, to get quality data, it will take time. And remember, time equals more money. Papua New Guineans, must I remind you that if this Vagrancy Act is approved, you will pay extra tax. Ladies and gentlemen, in a country where side money or bribery is becoming a common practice, the effective monitoring of the boom gates becomes an lucrative business of weak moral characters. Must I remind you that if these centers are fenced, that is like different centers in PNG are fenced, there is only one gate, and trained personnel will guide this gate. And they will have to see who goes in and who comes out. The cost not only can be of great economic value, but there is also a human cost to it. That is why we, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced in PNG because it is against the fundamental human rights.
And that's the second speaker from the opposing side, debating the topic, the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. For now, let's call the third speaker from the affirmative team. Please make welcome Lydia Ives.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Master of Ceremony, adjudicators, the audience, and the media. As mentioned by my first speaker, I am Lydia Ives, the third speaker of the affirmative team. I'll be talking on the economical aspect of this. But before I do so, ladies and gentlemen, as the third speaker of the government, I strongly maintain that the Vagrancy Act should be introduced in Papua New Guinea. Before proceeding to my points, please allow me to make some rebuttals on what the second speaker of the opposition have said. The second speaker of the opposition have said that if we introduce the Vagrancy Act, we are going against the fundamental rights of the people. We are not going against the fundamental rights of the people. We are trying to impose a monitoring system for the betterment of the people. The second speaker mentioned something about the expensive act. The second speaker said that it is an expensive act. We, the government of the day, know our budgets, and we know that it is possible for us, and we can repatriate these people back to their villages. Now, moving on to my points, dependency ratio is high. Firstly, the act should be introduced because it will greatly reduce the dependency load in Papua New Guinea. Many unemployed people migrate to the cities and live with working relatives. They rely very heavily on the sole breadwinner to put food on the table. The working relatives live in the cities will have to work more harder to feed a large family of unemployed dependents. Therefore, we, the government, would like to introduce the Vagrancy Act. Secondly, decentralization of economical activities. The Vagrancy Act should be introduced to ensure decentralization of economic activities are centered around urban centers. Because there are a very small number of people living in the rural areas. With the introduction of the Vagrancy Act and the action plan we the government have proposed, we will see more people in rural areas and will inevitably lead to more seriously delivering an economic viability in rural areas. Thirdly, reduces economic burden on towns and cities. It is for this reason that the government has developed the medium-term development plan. Decentralization of economic activities will lead drastically to the reduction of economic burdens on urban centers. Billions of taxpayers' money go to provision of water supplies, sewage and rubbish disposal, and electricity. Vagrants need to return home so that the government can be relieved of this burden. Lastly, give back some of the economic benefits to the original people. Furthermore, the Vagrancy Act will allow for equal participation and benefit to original inhabitants of the land or cities. Currently, we see in Port Moresby the indigenous Motu Koitabuans pushed to the fringes of the city. Outsiders are benefiting greatly from small business activities more than them. More people in the city have resulted in greater competition. The original landowners have become second fiddle in their own land. This is a great concern for us, the government of the day. By introducing the Vagrancy Act and implementing our action plan, we can achieve greater economical participation for all parties concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, and the short-sighted opposition, I'm confident as I have convinced you all in accepting the introduction of the Vagrancy Act. Thank you.
And her team is really happy for her presentation. That's from the affirmative team, Team Kwikila Secondary. Please give a big hand to Lydia Eves. Okay, from the opposition side, from Team Port Moresby International School, ladies and gentlemen, and participants, and our audience, please make welcome Jude Kamano.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony. Good afternoon, judges, the audience, my fellow debaters. My name is Jude Kamano, and I'm the third speaker of Port Moresby International School, and we are going against the topic of enabling the Vagrancy Act. Before I begin, I would like to start with a few rebuttals. Speaker 2 from the government side, and I quote, said that we are not stopping the law. We are controlling the influx of people. And Speaker 3 also said that we are not stopping the law, but we are monitoring. Actually, the Vagrancy Act is not about monitoring or stopping the law. It is depriving the rights, the constitutional rights of the people of Papua New Guinea. My second rebuttal is that Speaker 2 mentioned we are trying to share the resources by enabling the Vagrancy Act, and I quote, well, the Vagrancy Act is not about sharing the resources. It is about isolating individuals of this country, isolating the people by sending back to the village. Okay, I shall begin. I will be coming from the political perspective and also the human psychological perspective. We, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced because it is fundamentally against human rights. Okay, politically, the Constitution of Papua New Guinea. Now, what is the Constitution? Well, we all know that the Constitution is the basic principles and laws of a nation, state, or social group that determines the powers and duties of the government and guarantee certain rights to people within it. Now, under the Constitutional Act that talks about individuals, in Part 3, Division 3, Subdivision C, under the Qualified Rights for Citizens of PNG Act 52, it states, and I quote, "Citizens have the right to freedom of movement." Now, if it has the right to freedom of movement, why would we directly go against this policy by enabling the Vagrancy Act and isolating individuals from moving from place to place? Because individuals have the right to move from place to place, and this is a democratic nation where people have their rights. This means that our country's fundamental laws strongly believe that each individual, despite your education or public status, has the right to move from one place to another, based on suitable reasons. Now, if the Vagrancy Act were to be enabled, it would be purely against our Constitution. This would defy the strength of the Constitution. Then it would portray a message that laws and rights can be amended from time to time to suit one's opinion. My second point will be on Papua New Guinea and the UN, being part of the UN, United Nations. PNG is part of the UN. Thus, it follows the concept and moral laws of the UN. Now, the UN, as we all know, is a group of countries which comes under the name of United Nations. Now, the UN law clearly states, the UN Charter states that individuals have the right to movement, just like the Constitution. So if we are going against this right, going against this law and moral principle of both the Union, going against the UN and the country as the Constitution, then we are directly going against our own beliefs. A result of the enabling of the Vagrancy Act would be a result in the increase of law and order problems. Certain individuals would see that since the act can be bendable, why can't some other acts be bendable and new laws can be introduced into the society, like enabling prostitution and homosexuality? Now, the psychological aspect. Now, it is in the psychological mind of humans, it's in our instinct that people can move from one place to another. Humans are migratory animals. We have migrated from one place since the beginning of what Christians may call creation, or other believers, scientists may call theory of evolution. According to a reaction conducted by the University of Texas in 2008, it states that humans' instinct to move from place, it is a basic human instinct to move from an area of high resource to an area of low resource. Now, as the Lord also said in Genesis chapter 2, "Go forth and be fruitful and multiply." Therefore, the Vagrancy Act is 1, against the PNG Constitution, 2, against the United Nations Constitution, and 3, against human instinct. Therefore, it is our principle to say that we, the negative team, strongly believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced because it is fundamentally against human rights. Thank you.
Well done, Jude Kamano, who's going to be a surgeon one day, and he will dissect the Vagrancy Act. Thank you very much. Now we're going to listen to our final speakers in the IBS school debate in this elimination round, and the topic in discussion in debate is the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. The final speaker will have 10 minutes. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Angeline Orea from Kwikila Secondary.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, the adjudicators, the audience, and Papua New Guinea. Before I proceed on to my summary, I would like to make some rebuttals regarding the points made by the opposition team. The third speaker of the opposition mentioned that by introducing the Vagrancy Act, we are isolating individuals. Well, that is not the case here, because we want to repatriate vagrants to their homes so that they can receive equal development. What I'm saying here is with regards to the second national goal and directive principle under our Constitution. The second national goal and directive principle states that we declare our second goal to be for all citizens to have equal opportunity to participate in and benefit from the development of our country. And therefore, we, the government, would strongly argue that the Vagrancy Act should be introduced in Papua New Guinea. Every citizen has a right to equity and equality under the law. When there is equality, everyone has equal basic services such as roads, schools, and health are provided to every part of the country. When government services are distributed equally, all parts of the country can experience development, and more people will be educated. This can continue to improving our living standards, and definitely we will achieve Vision 2050. Now, I would like to also make a rebuttal regarding the point made by the second speaker of the opposition. She mentioned that it is an expensive exercise. We, the government of today, are very optimistic that we have the budget and we can cater for repatriation of vagrants back to their homelands. She says that it can be successful. Many people thought that it was successful and it will be a very detrimental exercise. But a clear example is that of the Wau Bulolo, the Sipiks who lived in Wau and Bulolo townships. They were repatriated to Sipik, and they are happy about that exercise, and it was very successful. So what's the point of saying that repatriation of vagrants back to their homelands is not successful? Now, to my summary. We, the government, would like to introduce the Vagrancy Act because of issues such as overcrowding, like in a house putting pressure on the only breadwinner, and also unemployment. Vagrancy, we are talking about people who are not working, people who are on the streets, living and begging and adding to social issues, social problems. And those are the people whom we are trying to repatriate back to their own homelands so that they can benefit from the development that will take place there. How can the government develop rural areas when the whole bunch of people are in Port Moresby or in towns? You can't develop a rural area when there's no one there. Who is going to benefit from the development? Therefore, we, the government, would like to introduce the Vagrancy Act to repatriate these vagrants back to their homelands so that the development that we bring to the rural areas, they can all benefit from that. Another social issue caused by the vagrants is poverty. They live and beg on the streets. It's very obvious. If you take a walk through 4 Mile, you see a lot of people on the streets begging for money. Those are vagrants. Those are the type of people we are talking about. They have one-talks, relatives. Those people back at home will take them back. So it's not an alien practice to repatriate these people back to their homelands because their relatives want to see them as aliens on planet Earth, right? They will welcome them warmly. Another issue, social issue caused by vagrants is the issue of prostitution. Because of vagrancy, high on the rate, it leads to prostitution. And prostitution leads to HIV and AIDS. Therefore, we are saying that we introduce the Vagrancy Act so that these people who would be most likely to be in the vagrancy situation to go back home and not to practice prostitution so that we cut down on the HIV and AIDS rate. The introduction of the Vagrancy Act will also reduce the increased crime rate. These vagrants who are on the streets have nothing, no source of income, and therefore they always tend to crime. Because they are not working, they tend to crime, pickpocketing, joining big gangs and robbing big shops. These people are not born as criminals, but as a basic instinct for survival, they tend to criminal activities. Therefore, we want to introduce the Vagrancy Act to repatriate these people back home. Because in Papua New Guinea, we all have a root. We all have our provinces. We all have our villages. And if we are in our villages, we are not losers. Now, take for example, as a central student here, I will talk on the central people. Goilala people, the Goilalas in Port Moresby, they should go home. It's not far from home. Port Moresby is next to Central Province, so they should just catch a PMV and go home, instead of messing around at Gerahu Stage 2 and adding to social disorder. Another clear example is of the Southern Highlanders. With the LNG project coming up, it's a multi-billion kina project. They should go home and benefit from that. Why live on the streets of Port Moresby? Like in a night, you drive around in a car, you see people sleeping on curtains in front of shops, right? And those are vagrants. We want to repatriate those vagrants back to their homelands. Because LNG is a multi-billion kina, they benefit from royalty and also the spin-off benefits from there. Because if they are in towns and cities, because of overcrowding and no employment, they are suffering. In the towns and cities, vagrants become losers. Back at home, we are winners, right? Speaking economically, my first point is decentralization of economic activities as stated by my third speaker. Because of low population, services are only centered around cities and towns. And therefore, the Vagrancy Act will be the most considerable solution to repatriating vagrants to the rural homelands, so that we, the government, can develop the whole country, including the most rural areas in terms of water supply, electricity, roads, and health services. And also because of the upcoming elections, people need to be back in their own provinces, their electorates, to vote. When the voting takes place, that is when the government sees how many people are in an electorate and government services are based there. Also speaking economically, the government has already put various instruments in place like district support investment programs and treasury rollout programs to provide avenues for people interested in business. Rather than remaining in cities and continuously missing out on these benefits, people are rather better off in their place of origin, where they have the social security, I mean their one-talks and relatives. And also they have opportunities to formally engage themselves in business and other ventures to earn a decent living far removed from the environmental crime and lawlessness of towns and cities. People believe that it is impossible, but lately with the resettlement of Sipiks in Wau and Bulolo townships and the West Syrians from 9 Mile outside NCD, many stated that the removal of Sipiks would be detrimental, but it must be pointed out clearly that despite that, the repatriation was actually successful. And therefore, we, the government, would like to introduce the Vagrancy Act. The Constitution says that the National Parliament has the supreme lawmaking power in Papua New Guinea. It has the authority to make or change policies and laws that will affect our interests and rights of freedom. It must be understood that although we have the right to freedom of movement, we must also know that the law can control or restrict this freedom. For example, during a curfew, movement in Papua New Guinea is restricted between 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's a very classical example. So what we are doing by making a proposal to enact the Vagrancy Act is not taking away the freedom of the citizens. As a sensible government, we are controlling and regulating it so that vagrants or people who are most likely to be vagrants in the near future don't interfere with other people's rights. Vagrancy laws that we propose are to encourage vagrants to return home voluntarily, ensure that companies provide shelter for workers, settlements be inspected, and vagrants be repatriated after a certain grace period. To enable the above, we, the government, are to establish a cheap transport system. This will then enable volunteers to be repatriated home. And also a monitoring system should be devised to control the influx of people into towns and cities. It's like a passport or a visa. To conclude, we, the responsible and the sensible government of the day, would like to state clearly that the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. Thank you.
Wow, they finally made it. They've completed their debate, Kwikila Secondary. And you heard, of course, from the final speaker of the affirmative team, Ms. Angeline Aurea. Please give Team Kwikila a big hand. But the battle is not yet over. Please make welcome Marcus Blake from the opposition side, Port Moresby International School.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the judges, the timekeeper, the chairperson, and you in the audience for being here. My name is Marcus. I'm the fourth speaker for the negative side, and we are arguing that the Vagrancy Act should not be reintroduced into Papua New Guinea because it is fundamentally against human rights. I'd like to start, before I sum up my team's argument, by making a few rebuttals on some of the affirmative side's arguments. To start with, just a couple of general rebuttals. There was a consistent theme throughout the affirmative side's argument to do with transport and how they would easily and affordably transport all the vagrants back to their places of origin. Any transport system on such a wide million-person scale is going to cost a lot of money. Think about an airline ticket. Multiply the cost of that airline ticket by millions. That's a lot of money. If the government's going to spend that, it's a lot of money. Next, I would like to make another general rebuttal on the fact that the government of the day was consistently saying that these people should more or less just leave. I believe the government's meant to look after their people, not tell them to leave. Next, I would like to rebut on something the first speaker said, or a few things. The first speaker for the affirmative side stated that they would encourage the vagrants to leave, and that if they didn't leave, laws would apply. I have to ask the open-ended question, what laws? Because at the moment, there's no real laws in place to deal with this, and no laws were proposed by the government. Next, the first speaker also said that the government of the day had a plan to control the influx of vagrants. What kind of plan is that? Let's look at Port Moresby, for example. How do you control people coming into the city? They can come in by roads, they could walk across the land, they could fly. How would you stop that? Maybe a fence. Maybe a fence around Port Moresby would work. I will get to that point later. Next, I would like to rebut on something the third speaker for the opposition said. Sorry, for the government said. The third speaker stated, "We are not going against fundamental rights." Again, I'll get to this later, but in short, a Vagrancy Act goes against the Papua New Guinean Constitution, the UN Charter, which is a document dictating the standard human rights any human in the world has, and it's going against fundamental human instinct, a point I will come to later. Finally, I would like to rebut on a few things the fourth and final speaker for the affirmative side stated. It was stated by the fourth and final speaker that the government wanted these people, these vagrants, to have equal opportunity to participate in the development of Papua New Guinea. If you send them back home, how can they participate? They're not able to work back in the village and earn a steady income, like they would, say, here, in a firm here. It's very, very different, and they're not participating to the overall economic development by farming for themselves. It's not physically working. Next, I would also like to state that the fourth speaker stated that they have a budget. Well, the budget had better be pretty big, because just to build a fence around Port Moresby would cost 10 million kina. That's only Port Moresby. Now imagine Lae, Goroka, Mount Hagen, Madang, Kokopo, Rabaul, etc., etc., etc. That's a lot of 10 million kinas. Now, if the current government in-house at Parliament at the moment is unable to devote enough money to, say, infrastructure, we are at 6 Mile at the moment. If anyone would care to walk about 100 metres in that direction, you'll find quite a large pothole. Now, if the government can't fix potholes like that, where are they going to find the millions and millions, possibly billions of kina to transport vagrants who may be looking for jobs to stimulate the economy back to their places? It's counterproductive. Also, the fourth speaker stated that these vagrants are putting pressure on the breadwinner. The definition of a vagrant is someone who has no visible means of support. If someone is paying for them and feeding them, they have a visible means of support, therefore they are not a vagrant. Next, I would like to begin, finally, summing up my team's argument. To start with, I'd like to make the point that humans, we are all humans, we are by instinct migratory animals. What do I mean by migratory animals? We all came from one place initially. If you're a Christian, that's the Garden of Eden. If you're a scientist, that's Africa. But either way, we all went from that place and went around the world. We are migratory by instinct. To stop someone from moving and migrating is going against fundamental human instinct, not to mention the Papua New Guinean Constitution, in which it states, subject to subsection 3, no citizen may be deprived of the right to move freely throughout the country, to reside in any part of the country, and to enter and leave the country. It also states that no citizen shall be expelled or deported from the country except by virtue of an order of a court. So, back to my point. It goes against not only the UN Charter, which states virtually the same thing as the Constitution, it also goes against the Constitution and against fundamental human instinct. Why would we impose something that was fundamentally wrong to begin with and was abolished before independence because it was fundamentally wrong? It's counterproductive. It doesn't make sense. Next, I would like to ask the open-ended question. Is it fair? Is it fair to stop someone moving where they wish? The initial Vagrancy Act dictated that 3 kilometres from where you were from was as far as you could move. That means that someone from 6 Mile or from Koki or from Hanuabara cannot go to school at POMIS, at POM Grammar, at Caritas, at Ella Murray, at Corabasia, at St. Joseph's, at any of the schools in that district. You are restricting people's education, people's ability to work. You are restricting people's lives by stopping them from moving. Next, we need to ask, well, again, continue asking the question, is it fair? How do you impose such an act on such a large, nationwide scale? Well, the first obvious thing is you're going to need the police and the judicial system. The police, unfortunately, are underfunded, they're understaffed, they're undertasked, they're under-equipped, and they're underappreciated. Now, how do you expect these people to enforce on a nationwide scale, with all those dilemmas, something like the Vagrancy Act? Next question you need to ask is, if a Wontok from one of those policemen wants to go for a wander or come into an area that they're not meant to be in, the policeman then has to make the very difficult call, should I let him in? Should I let her in? And more likely than not, the policeman will side with them and let them in. So you can't enforce this on a nationwide scale unless you get independent policemen, and that would again cost lots of money. Thirdly, if that vagrant has 500 kina, for example, and they really want to go into that other place, they might pay the policeman 200 kina. Policeman then gets 200 kina. He likes that, or she likes that. So he's not going to stop them coming in. Next, once the vagrant is caught, supposing they get caught in the wrong area, they then have to, well, something has to happen to them. Now, they can go to prison temporarily, but the prisons are overcrowded, and once they're in prison, what do they do then? Well, then they need to be tried. If they're tried, if every vagrant who is out of his supposed area is tried, that's going to put an immense strain on the judicial system. An immense strain. It's not going to be able to cope with that strain. So people are just going to get ushered through without any trial, and the system's going to collapse. Another reason why the Vagrancy Act should not be introduced. As I already mentioned, it's not really affordable. 10 million kina to fence off Port Moresby is a lot of money. Next, you have to consider things like, well, you have to pay the police for doing the job. You have to, if you're going to register everyone, as the government and the opposition both say you would need to, if you're going to register everyone, you need ID cards, a database, you need a registration system. All of this is going to cost a lot of money. Finally, I would like to sum up by saying no civilized country in the world has a Vagrancy Act. why should Papua New Guinea have a Vagrancy Act? It was wrong to begin with and it was abolished. It was brought in by the Australian colonialists, a fact, as an Australian, I say sorry for, because it was fundamentally wrong. This is why, as the negative team or the opposition or whatever you want to call us, this is why we believe that the Vagrancy Act should not be reintroduced into Papua New Guinea because it is fundamentally wrong. It goes against fundamental human instinct as well as the Papua New Guinean Constitution. Thank you.
And there we go. That's the final speaker from the opposing team, Marcus Blake from Port Moresby International School. And the topic that has been debated is the Vagrancy Act should be introduced. Please give a big hand again, once again, to Marcus Blake. You know, when there is ethnic unrest, you will see political leaders, women leaders, business representatives, community leaders, they come out to start talking about the Vagrancy Act. When there is nothing, they forget all about the Vagrancy Act. All right. Okay, that's something to think about. We hope the politicians and all those have learned some lessons from our discussions today. But I'd like to say thank you to our participating team, if you all can stand up, please. And to Kwikila Secondary, we say thank you to Tau Uda, Diga Tau, Angeline Orea, and Lydia Eves. I'd like to say thank you to all those schools that have made it into the into the elimination round, and we wish all of you good luck when we tally the scores to announce the 6 that will make it into the semi-finals. I'd like to say thank you to the judges, and the judges, of course, Mrs. Magalu, Mr. John Enoch, Dr. Mark Solon, and Dr. Patricia Parade. Please give them a big hand. And I'd also like to say thank you to our participating sponsors, and that's NBC Kundutu and the National Flag Carrier, NU Guinea. Also like to say thank you to the major sponsors, that's the National Capital District Commission, the National Gaming Control Board, Papua New Guinea Electoral Commission, Office of the Climate Change, the LNA Group of Companies, NAS Fund, Brian Bell, and Ipatas Foundation. And Ipatas Foundation is, of course, supporting its debate in the Enga province. That's for the national, for the Enga competition. So give yourselves a big hand for being good audience today too as well. IBS school debate, it's time now to announce the rankings of the 12 schools that have participated in the elimination round of the IBS School Debate 2011 series. All right, before we do that, I'd like to call now one of the judges to come forward and just say a few remarks on the teams that have participated, more importantly, about the topics that were discussed today. So please, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's make welcome on stage Mrs. Patricia Parade, who has been a judge for our competition today. And she is from the National Research Institute. I guess she has, this program or the debate has been very, very useful to her during her short time here with us on the debate. So may we welcome on stage Dr. Patricia Parade.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the debaters, very well done. It was a very difficult task trying to award points to all of you. You are all winners. You were all good speakers. And we had a difficult time trying to decide who is the best one. But you are all very good. And unfortunately, there will be only some winners, yeah? There will be some winners, some will miss out. But you are all very good. Okay, now with all the topics, what we were looking for when you were debating is very straightforward. First of all, your eye contact. When you stand up here, if we saw your eyes, you were wandering around, not looking at the audience, trying to convince us what to do. Some of us marked you hard on that. Also, the way you're dressed, when you come up here, we would like you well-dressed. You know, we were also looking at your attire when you came up here. So tomorrow, if you're in the finals, think about those things. The way you project your voices. Some of you, when you use the microphone, there's no need to shout. You speak at a level where it is easy for us to hear, or the people you're trying to convince listen to your arguments. The way you present your arguments, if it is logical and it follows a step, and we can follow it, the judges can follow, we scored you well on those. Your professionalism, especially the rebuttals. Now, those are times when you have to think on your feet, as we call it, because you're not prepared for that. You're here, you listen to your opponents, and you have to reply to them. Some of you did that very well. Teamwork, where the teams really worked well, it came out clearly also in the scoring, because you all supported each other throughout the competition. And the research, of course. You all did a lot of research. Some of you researched well. Also, when we were giving references, in some of the cases, you gave too many references. Sometimes we get tired. I mean, sometimes you give too much of it, yeah? Sometimes you just give your point and you say, okay, so it came from this source. That's all. Yeah? You don't have to go on and on about it. But it is good. It is good that you do make reference to some of the points that you make, but don't spend too much time on it. We will believe you. Okay, and all the points, I will not go through all the topics that you did. You all argued it well. Some of your recommendations, they were actually very intelligent recommendations, and from a young team like you, I think we're going to have very good leaders in the future. I won't say any more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, I'd like to call now the IBS representative, Dr. Mark Solong, to come and say a few words to all those who participated in the elimination round. Please make welcome Dr. Solong.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've been given the pleasure to, on behalf of IBS, to thank you all for these wonderful and exciting activities for the last few days, and especially today. So we are privileged simply because of you, our participants, and the sponsors. So on behalf of IBS, I would like to thank particularly Kondutu and NBC, our partners, and New Guinea, and our major sponsors, NCDC, National Gaming Board, Electoral Commission, Office of the Climate Change, NASFAN, Brian Bell, LNA, and Ipatas Foundation for the EGA competition, the Commission, the Electoral Commission, and not to forget the Master of Ceremony, who enabled these activities to continue. And of course, for a successful activity, there are always people in the back who make sure that we all enjoy the occasion, and Team IBS, who have been very, very active in preparing this. And finally, but not the least, the teachers and the schools and you participants. We are privileged that you have taken the time to join us to share this knowledge with the rest of Papua New Guinea. On your behalf and on behalf of IBS, thank you very much, and we look forward to your continued participation. Of course, all our contribution leads to one thing, and that is to help young people of this country to become good leaders of the future. And we believe the future will be theirs if they lead us into that. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your continued participation.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Solong. And we wish you all the best in the future judging. There's the semifinals coming up, so he'll be still in that hot seat. So now I will announce the winners, not the winners, but in order. And as we go up the ladder, you will find out how you fared in the debate. We'd like to say thank you and congratulations to the school that have made it into the elimination round, and from that round had scored 1,410 to be in the 12th position, and that's Mount Diamond Secondary.
A round of applause.
One of the topics that was hotly debated was prostitution should be legalized, scoring 1,545. The team that made it into the 11th position was Sogeri National High School. First timer in the IBS school debate competition, scoring 1,568. Debating the topic, the LNG project has more negative effects for PNG. Coming in at number 10 is St. Charles Luanga Secondary School. Scoring 1,581. Debating the topic, democracy is the ideal form of government. At number 9, Laloki Secondary. Coming in number 8 with 1,595. Discussing or debating the topic, the Mining Act should be renewed for maximum benefit of landowners, is Kupiano Secondary. Well done. And just been tipped from the top 6. At number 7, scoring 1,614, just by 2 points, discussing prostitution should be legalized, was Badiagoa High School. Well done to all you teams. The schools from number 7 to number 12 have performed extremely well in your own right, and we'd like to say thank you for your participation, and we'd like to wish you all the best in the next round. So please give a big hand to those 6 schools that have dropped out now in the final. So now you have some idea of which school has made it into the semi-finals. Yes? Before I make that announcement, I'd like to say thank you once again to our sponsors. The major sponsors are the National Capital District Commission, the National Gaming Control Board, the Papua New Guinea Electoral Commission, the Office of Climate Change, the LNA Group of Companies, NASFAN, Brian Bell, and Ipatas Foundation Incorporation. So please give them a big hand, because without them, this program won't be possible. Ladies and gentlemen, at number 6, scoring 1,116, making it into the final semi-finals, discussing the topic, the Mining Act should be reviewed for maximum benefit of the landowners. Please congratulate Port Moresby National High School. At number 5, debating the topic, there should be compulsory HIV test, scoring 1,629. Congratulate Kwikila Secondary. Do you want me to continue? Okay. Democracy is the ideal form of government. Scoring 1,644 is Garahu Secondary. I'm just thinking of that participant who wanted to become a politician. Is he still around? Okay. At number 3, the Vagrancy Act should be reviewed. That was the topic of debate. Just winning by 1 point to get the number 3 spot at 1,645. Please congratulate Port Moresby International High School! And Marcus Blake did extremely well for his team, and I think he was the one that scored highly for his team, so please give him a big hand. We have 2 teams left, and I know you're wondering who they are, but I also know who, what you're guessing. Scoring 1,676, coming in number 1 in the elimination round is Kwikila Secondary. They were the one that debated the Vagrancy Act should be reviewed, and it was very interesting to hear that these 2 topics have actually made it to the top 6. So, do you know who is the second place getter? What school? So, congratulations to Tokara High School. You've made it into the number 2 position. That was a hot topic debated as well. The 2 schools that were for and against this topic had made it into the final 6, and there should be compulsory HIV test, and they scored 1,670. So congratulations to all schools that have made it into the semi-finals. And also congratulations to those schools that have participated in the elimination round, and we wish you all the best in the 2012 debate competition. I'd like to invite the representatives from each schools. Firstly, Kwikila Secondary and Tokara Secondary to come up, please, as well as the number 3 position, Port Moresby International High School, and Gerahu Secondary representative to come up, please. And Kwikila Secondary and Port Moresby National High School, please come up to the stage. What we're going to do now is to draw the subject or the topic that you will be debating in the semi-finals. So please, can the representative, the teachers, come up on stage? Okay, the teams, that's 1 and 2 will be partnering, 2 and 3 will be partnering, and 5 and 6 will be partnering. So can you come up here on stage? And you shall, 1 and 2 will draw their topic of debate. And so Kwikila will pick for both Kwikila and Tokara High School. So Mr. Henry? No, not the Minty, yeah, the other Minty. Just one? Just one? Yeah, okay, that's it. Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so we'll read out the question that will be debated for by these 2 schools. That's Tokara Secondary and Kwikila Secondary. Your topic for debate in the semi-finals is first past the post is better than LPV. First past the post is better than LPV. We'll find out who will be for and against shortly. But may I now call upon a representative from POMIS and Gerahu, say who wants to come up and pick up a Minty from this box. Grab a Minty and the paper. It's coming from the Minty, so okay, there we go. All right. The topic that will be debated by both POMIS and Gerahu Secondary is climate change is not only a threat, but an opportunity in Papua New Guinea. I'll now call one of the representatives from both Kwikila and Port Moresby National High School to come and pick up the rest of the minty. There's 4 there, so you can get them all. But I just need my paper back, yes. You get the container and the minties, and I'll get the paper. Okay, your topic for debate in the semifinals, that's Kwikila Secondary and Port Moresby National High School. Compulsory membership savings to superannuation has benefited a lot of Papua New Guineans. Yes or no? True or false? Oh, that's going to be a tough one. So good luck to the teams that will be doing a lot of research. Those are your topics. You're pulling for Tokara. So if Tokara is for the topic, then Kwikila is against the topic. So, Mr. Henry, you get your team ready. You are the affirmative, you are the opposition team, and Tokara is the affirmative team. Okay, next lot for and against. This is for POMIS and Gerehu. Let's see if it's the right side. Gerehu Secondary is the right side. They are the affirmative team for their topic. You know your topic? Good. Now let's have the final school to come and pick. You're representing POM Nets. Okay, Port Moresby National High School. And Port Moresby National High School is the negative side. They are in the opposition. And Kwikila Secondary is for the topic. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the final standing and the positions of the 6 schools that will be participating in the semis next time round. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, adjudicators. Thank you, the IBS school debate team. Thank you, everyone. And we hope you all can join us for the semifinals. And it's from me, Kevin Marai. Goodbye.